start recording. Now it should be recording and streaming. Okay, so should we start over?
I mean, sure.
Sure.
Why not?
It's not like I have
Let's
the
start
footage
over.
of us presenting ourselves, and she
No.
probably joined in the aftermath.
Exactly.
So, welcome to
Yeah.
Unprofessional Conversation. Today we're talking about what makes a good story. I have my great friend Lucas here, who is a kind of hobby author who mostly writes fan fictions.
True.
To
Yes.
talk about what makes a good story, as the title says. So, well, yeah, we started, and then I lost some, or I realized I wasn't really recording him, so that's very fun. And then now we're trying again, so we can just get back to about where we were, which was pretty much the start, and that's just
Yes.
what makes a good story and how do we want to go out on it. So you can start from there.
Okay. Well, as I was about to explain earlier, a story is kind of like, just an amalgamation of a lot of different things. It's not just one sort of factor that makes a story good. It's a combination of a lot of things. So you have at least, what I would consider to be the general principles of a story, or like the founding concepts, where you have, a good story is made up of characters, it's made up of a plot line, it's made up of backstory, and it's made up of the actual technical aspect to it, where how well are you writing, do you have a lot of grammar mistakes, how clear is your prose, shit like that. And those are what I would consider to be the 5 or 4 core aspects to writing a good story. And a lot of stories and authors and shit like that, they do 2 of these very well, or maybe even 1, or maybe even 3 of these very well, but very rarely do you get a story that has a great plot line, is technically well made, has amazing characters, and an amazing world / backstory to delve into. Usually, there's always something lacking, and yeah, which is why I find it, it's kind of difficult to find the perfect story in a way.
Yes, no, I agree. Because what you're saying for the most part is that, like, the categories in which you're listing are very mainstream when it comes to nearly every single story. I
Yes.
fundamentally think that what the first thing you have to look at when deciding what's a good story is obviously the medium, right? Which in this conversation we're probably going to focus on the writing medium on itself. So I can skip the other mediums,
Yes.
but after you look into the medium, you look into the reader and the motivation of the reader, right? Because
Yes.
well, you can divide stories into different categories. We obviously have archetypal stories, which are more of in a religious sense, not only religious, but they have the same kind of characteristics as religious stories, where they propose a moral superposition, or a moral position that's the right moral position, and they make the main character a hero in that position, and they make the villain the opposing position, or a position that is in general different, and they make it so the story is the hero defeating that villain, in a sense, making the story into that moral superior position defeating the less moral superior position. In that sense, it's you often get a liking to the story because of the fact that you agree with the moral position the story is taking. For example, if I'm gonna take one that I don't know a lot of people have seen, it's the anime One Piece, where you love the main character Luffy because of the fact that he's an idiot who always does the right thing no matter the consequences, because he isn't capable of thinking about the consequences, or because even when he acknowledges the consequences, he doesn't care, right? He will fight the whole world if that means he doesn't have to let someone kill someone he doesn't want killed, right?
Yes.
The second category...
One Piece... One Piece is technically also the king of killing characters, but then bringing them back again almost immediately, which is very ironic, because that's kind of one of the things you don't want to do, the Jesus complex, basically, where you just resurrect your characters all the time, where you're like, oh, it looks like that character's dead, and then suddenly he's back again, he somehow survived.
Yeah, no, mostly with the villains, though, and I'm as a general consequence things, because obviously, I think a lot of writers talk about is that you have to establish a consequence spectrum where quite early and continue that consequence spectrum in the sense that if your story has characters that die, and you
Yes.
want that death to have an impact, you can never ever revive a character from death, because then death loses its impact. Then it's like, well, they can come back, so why worry, right?
Exactly.
I feel like One Piece is okay with this because One Piece, number one, the most of the deaths they have are for villain characters. The main characters are often beaten to the brink of death, but they're never really explicitly dead. And most of the villains aren't really explicitly dead either, but it's a lot easier to assume that they're dead than anything else. At least from what I know of the anime. But One Piece at no point really needs the whole death is permanent thing, and it also is a bit smart in the fact that it has specific rules for what defines a character dying, or what defines a character having permanent consequences. An example would be big spoiler, so shut off your ears. In around episode 600 or 700, Luffy's brother Ace is killed or executed, right? And you very much know in that moment that he's dead because every single character around him acts as if that person is dead and acts as if that person just died, while in every other scenario they don't. And that's also a significant difference. If the story doesn't tell you in every way, if the story starts telling you in every way that something's dead and then you bring it back to life for the whole this is a massive plot twist thing, then you're ruining the consistency of keeping someone alive. But if you're making sure that there are clear emotional differences between the character that dies and comes back, so the fact that you understand that, well, this character can come back, it's a bit random, it doesn't matter that much because it wasn't such an important character, and you also understand that when another character dies, it's like, this is an important character, he was clearly dead, and you clearly had the emotional response you would expect to it. And so you obviously understand, or you quickly understand that, well, okay, this is a dead character, they're not coming back. But I can agree with you that the whole continuity thing is a problem often in newer stories, because when I watched One Piece and Ace died, it never really completely hit me in the aftermath that he was dead. My brain always kind of went, well, they can easily bring him back, because nearly all series do this, from my experience.
Yeah, they have a tendency to bring back characters that should have died or stayed dead.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, One Piece and shows like it, suffer from more problems than just character deaths. I have seen a substantial amount of One Piece, but I haven't seen enough to have like an actual factual or correct opinion about it. My biggest problem with like One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, all of these shows is that they're simply too long for their own good.
Yes.
The author has taken the original idea or story and he has pulled it way too thin. So he's dragged it and he's milking it as actively and heavily as he can.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the fact that 1/3 of the entire show is filler.
Yeah.
Episodes that have nothing in them apart from two characters standing around talking for ages, even sometimes in the middle of fights, where a one fight scene that has 30 seconds of action will have 20 minutes of dialogue and exposition and two characters standing there just talking to each other in the middle of a fight. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of kills the excitement and the purpose of fight scenes for me, which is why I never really got into Naruto or Bleach or One Piece all that much, because it just feels too long and too pointless and too dragged out to the point where I'm just like, I can't bother to read this shit.
No,
or watch this shit.
I very much agree on the fact that it's right. I feel like there's a certain there is a certain point where the dragged out of it is a positive, and there's a certain point it crosses very often where it stops being a positive, because I feel there's something very, very interesting about spending much more time on these moments. The big problem of that is also that it's much harder to consume, and you have to have a lot more interest in characters and story, and you also have to have a lot more, you also will rarely give it all the focus you have, because of the fact that it's not exactly efficient to put that much time into it. But yeah,
Yes.
because what I feel with One Piece is that one of the things I very much love about it is the amount it takes, because it feels like things have taken time, and like the things they do actually happened over a long time span, and that these characters have developed over time. But it's I can so agree with you that it's dragged too far. For example, an episode I watched not too long ago, he gets trapped, or the main character gets trapped by a devil fruit power, or a special power, I can say, for those of you who don't know what a devil fruit power is. And he has this nail in his hands that basically makes so his hands is what traps him, and so he kind of tries to rip his hands off in an attempt to escape, because he argues that that not having hands is better than being dead. But it spends quite a lot of time on just having him do that, while characters around him react 2 or 3 times about the same way, and then it skips to another moment, and then later comes back, does the same thing, and then continues in that moment, which is very dragged out.
Yeah.
So
No, I feel like it's kind of the nature of the beast, and I'm sure that if you started watching One Piece when it was 100 episodes into its runtime or something like that, I can see why you could still be watching, because when you started, there wasn't that much to it. It was still very much in the beginning phases. And now that you've been watching for like 10, 20 years, you're still just invested in it, because you've been watching it all this time. And, there might be 900 episodes, but since you were there from episode 100, you've, seen 800 of them as they came out. So, it's I feel like they're very like unapproachable for regular people, unless you have way too much free time, or you're just like a genuine maniac. Then you're not, very few people. Yeah, exactly. Very few people are gonna bother spending the closer to like 350 hours it takes to watch and catch up to One Piece. There are very few people who are gonna bother doing that now, because it's so long that it's just too daunting of a task. And I also feel like, with things like that, like, I one of the shows that I really love, especially since we're on the topic of anime, one of the shows that I really love is Hunter x Hunter, because it's long, it's like 145 something episodes, but it still feels like every episode serves a purpose. There are very, very few episodes, apart from some in the final arc, that are dragged out purely for the sake of being dragged out. Like, it feels like the entire thing was planned from start to finish, and that, when you get to that final episode, it wasn't just, made up as they went along. It was very much planned from the beginning that is how it would end, or, that's where the anime would end, at least. Yeah. And I feel like that sort of creates a very good thing. And also take like the Harry Potter series, for instance. Like, if you watch all 8 Harry Potter movies, that takes like a solid fucking 8-10 hours, right? Probably more than that, actually, way more than that. But it takes a quite a while to watch 8 movies, and it feels like, as you watch, it feels like a very long story, yet every single movie or book in the series serves a purpose. It has its own identity. It's very clear cut. You can tell them apart from each other, which film or which book you're on. And when you're at the end, it feels like, it was long, but it wasn't overly long. It sort of told a story, and you went on a journey with these characters and you got to know them, but it ended when it should have. It didn't, drag on for eternity, which is kind of what I feel like, with One Piece. I feel like it's the same thing that Hunter x Hunter suffers from now, the manga, because we've gotten to the point with Hunter x Hunter and Berserk, the manga for Berserk for that matter, where the author just doesn't fucking care about the series anymore. Like, they say they do, but it's pretty obvious that they don't really give a shit anymore. They've kind of just given up. Hunter
Yeah.
x Hunter gets like one new chapter every year or every 2 years, and the same with Berserk. It gets like one chapter every year, so it's very obvious that they have done the approach of just making shit up as they go, and they don't really have an idea of when or how they're going to end their series, which is just a major trap
Yeah.
that I feel sort of contributes to the creation of a poorly made series.
Yeah.
Hunter x Hunter suffers less from this than Berserk because Hunter x Hunter has a very clear point where you can say that the story.
Oh, your sound disappeared. Did something happen to your headphones? That can't be good. Oh, he disappeared from the chat. Well, that's always fun. Poof, gone. Okay, yes. So, I can't really continue the conversation without him. I can't. Well, who's watching, and if they're watching, please tell me. And I don't even know how many people are in the are watching the stream. How do I check that again there? Yeah, one view. That's nice. Hello, Veronica. He is gone. I'm going to ask him what happened. Can't be my internet, can it? No, it isn't. Otherwise I wouldn't still be streaming. Oh. He's back?
Yeah, I think I just got disconnected from the call.
Yeah, I realized.
How long ago was it?
Yeah, it was. Oh, where were you? You were just. I don't know. I think you were repeating yourself for the first time about the whole. Oh, the third time about the whole. The problem of the length. Right after the whole. Right after the part where the story starts, where people don't really have a goal to get to with the story, and so they just continue to write, and so they slowly get more and more bored of what they're writing, and it just becomes slower and slower and more stagnated, and you're describing it as a trap.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, I cut out for some reason. I basically just compared Berserk and Hunter x Hunter to each other.
Yeah.
And then talked about how Hunter x Hunter kind of gets away with it, but Berserk doesn't, and that's basically it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I very much agree with you on most of it. Like, I feel like One Piece isn't. I feel like a lot of these series actually has the same thing as Hunter x Hunter, and that's why they're just as popular as Hunter x Hunter were. Or was. I just feel like the difference is that the episodes aren't as different from each other as Hunter x Hunters are, but the whole goal thing. Because what I very much like about One Piece, and what I didn't start, what is the reason I will continue to watch One Piece, and it didn't come to me, or I didn't really realize it before after 400 or 500 episodes. Is that the guy who's making One Piece, he plans stuff, and he plans it far in advance. Either that, or he does stuff so that and remembers it well, because there are so many things from the first episodes and the first 300 episodes that are just coming back and interacting with the current world, and you can see there are so many things that are being set up from the first two arcs long into the future, because you realize at a point that for the main characters to get to their goal, they have to get around the Earth multiple times. Currently, they've only got they're getting around it once. They have to get some stuff on the third portion of the world, and at least that's how I interpret what they have to do. They have to go around it multiple times, and you can clearly see that it's setting up characters behind them that when they get around again, they can meet and interact with, and those characters will probably be more powerful and more interesting and have developed. And that's one of the things that's so great about it, because it won every arc and is just enormously varied, because it has that constant movement between thematic areas, or the islands, and and the writers are very talented in remembering or planning ahead on characters, so you can see characters developing and evolving and stuff like that. So you, for example, even have the enemies where you'll meet an enemy that it's when he's really really young, when he's like a kid who snuck onto a ship, and then he slowly but steadily develops within the series where he becomes a marine, which is basically the law enforcement that doesn't really like the pirates. And then he's pretty much a weak marine that continues to be weak, and then he's a part of a war where he's also weak, and he talks about, or he has a whole arc where he's kind of like, no, I have to stop running away and actually do something. And because he does this, he gains some form of power, and you can see small hints when he's interacting with kind of other cuts away from the main characters to just kind of showcase what's happening in that area. You can see that he's suddenly have a much higher position, and on and on and on. But yeah, what I'm trying to say in basic is that One Piece is a very shitty show until you get to episode 700, and then you stop regretting watching it.
No, but that's actually kind of ironic, because if you go to like, if you go to like my anime list, which is basically the IMDb for anime shows, right? If you're an anime watcher, you'll know what this website is. It's, it's pretty self-explanatory for those of you who are involved with the anime community. For those of you who aren't, it's basically IMDb for anime. And you look at the reviews for One Piece, you'll see that all of the reviews from back in like 2010, 2012 are all 9 and 10s out of 10. They're giving the show great ratings, and that was when the show was like 300 episodes in. But then if you go to the newer reviews from closer to our time, like 2016, 2017, they're all giving bad ratings. And every single one of them say that the reason they're giving it bad ratings is because the show is dragging so hard, and that it's so painfully slow. And even though he has a plot clearly planned out and an idea, it's gotten to the point now where he is dragging it out so incredibly.
I wouldn't blame the writer on that, because the manga doesn't do that. It's the anime that does that, because it's caught up to the manga a long time ago, and it's dragging it out a lot. At least that's what I've heard. I can't guarantee that in any way. But yeah, it is definitely true. The only reason I can watch it and like it is because I'm playing video games on the side, and I'm ignoring a lot of the side content that isn't relevant.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
So, and never watched.
I mean, I really like the.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, really like I feel like the two biggest strengths that One Piece have are the characters and the world that he's created. Because I feel like One Piece has a lot of really cool world building, like shit that sounds cool as shit, and that you can really get immersed in this. Sure, the story itself might be a little long-winded and kind of dragged out, but the characters and the world remain pretty damn solid, which is why I think people love it so much.
Yeah, it's definitely the whole story is good, but execution is just doing it
questionable.
Wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why the manga has such an enormous amount of positive reviews in comparison to the anime, because it's actually fixing that problem, and then it's just an enormously good story. So One Piece is also what I would call, as I made in the first part, it's an enormously good example of archetypal stories, which I feel is usually it's the stories that resonates emotionally most with the average population, right? Stories that kind of tell them, yes, your morals are great, or yes, this is right, and yes, this is cool and beautiful, and blah blah blah. Then again, you also have more stories that kind of deviant a bit. You could for example say that Goblin Slayer has absolutely nothing to do with an archetypal story in a sense. Kind of. It's hard to differentiate between archetypal stories because it's a very subjective term. But basically, you could say, well, it doesn't do the archetypal story by showing good morals against bad morals. You could say it does the archetypal story by showing that human beings or creatures in general have an intrinsic evil to them, which is something people resonate with, especially people who in for example the nihilist community and the which is probably a large majority of the community on the internet, I would assume. You know what nihilist is?
Yes, of course I know what a nihilist is.
Okay, I want to check. Okay, it took me time to.
Yeah.
It took me some extra time to figure it out than
Jesus
expected,
Christ.
so I would I would consider it
It's actually
smart.
really funny
Yeah.
to watch this because it's consistent as shit. Like if you, I'm looking through the reviews for One Piece on my Animal List, and the further you get to our time, 2020, the worse the reviews get. Like they're just dropping and dropping and dropping because people are getting tired of the story. People are getting tired of these characters. After 900 episodes, you would start to get a little bit fucking, okay, maybe this should have ended like 200 episodes ago. Maybe we should have had some major big story beats 200 episodes ago that signaled the end of the show. But since it's
Yes.
still just chugging along, people are sort of just like,
Definitely.
they can't see the end, which I can understand. But the premise sounds interesting enough. Because, the synopsis for One Piece is pretty much just that, there's this guy called Luffy and he wants to sail,
Did
the
you
Grand
just
Line,
pronounce it
and this
Luffy?
guy won't.
Is
Is
Luffy
it
correct?
Luffy?
I say Luffy. They say Luffy in the show too,
Yeah,
but Luffy is so much cooler.
yeah. It's because his name is spelled Luffy with two F's, so I
Okay.
figured that Luffy would be Monkey D. Luffy, like. But Luffy, sure, we can call him that. I mean, I
No,
don't know.
I like Luffy. It's so
I've
much
only
funnier.
seen the. But are you watching the dub or are you watching the
I watched the
actual?
dub until it ended, and then I started watching the sub. The
Oh,
dub
okay,
ends
yeah.
around 700, episode 700,
Yeah, but I've
episode
heard that
600.
the four kids dub is horrendous.
Oh, that's not the 4 Kids dub I'm watching, so that's fine.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Because the four kids One Piece dub is apparently dog shit.
yeah,
So
that's completely fine by me. I haven't
yeah,
watched it, so I wouldn't
yeah.
care.
Yeah. No, but basically, just like the premise sounds interesting. Basically, this guy just wants to sail the Grand Line and he wants to discover One Piece, this ultimate treasure or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I am wondering is, and this is coming from someone who hasn't really engaged all that much with One Piece, does he ever really reach the One Piece? Does he ever really discover anything? Does he ever really get the One Piece? Does he have it at any point in time? Does he lose it?
Uh,
Is he still chasing it?
from where I am, no. And I haven't expected him to get it anytime soon. What's
Do we
happened
even?
now is that he's found some ancient stones that one of the other characters that was introduced in a good amount of arcs ago are looking for,
Yeah,
and some of those stones have coordinates leading to an island called Raftel, which I would hope is where the One Piece is, if they want to end the show soon. But I suspect it's just a hint towards the One Piece with the language the people who described the stones and the island used.
yes,
So yes, but there's definitely a clear hint, and he's actually gotten two of these stones already, and he only needs two more, and that's like within 50 episodes of when the first stone was introduced. So
yeah, okay. But is it basically like, is One Piece one object, or is it like just a hoard of treasure?
well, from the context I've gotten, the Pirate King basically just says that I've left everything I've gathered together in one place. Now you just have to find it, and that's about as much context
Yeah.
as you get about what the One Piece
Oh, okay,
is.
okay, yeah.
Um,
Oh, okay.
so I would suspect it's more than just treasure. After all, it's probably a collection of very powerful items. They have something called like they have some ancient
Okay.
item known to be able to destroy the entire world. They call them weapons in the old runes they find, and one of the weapons is a person or a mermaid, who can basically control like the most powerful creatures in the sea with their voice. And then there's another weapon which I don't remember what was, if they even told me, or if they even told us. And then there's more, and there's a couple more that we haven't discovered yet. And I feel like one of those weapons
Yeah.
will definitely be there. There's a couple of devil fruits too that have the ability that work as those kind of weapons. Like there's the Quake Quick fruit, which can basically destroy the entire planet if you wanted to. and then there's the op fruit, which is the surgery fruit or something.
Oh God!
What?
Wait. Oh, this is tragic. Because I just googled I just went to the One Piece wiki to just look at what they define the One Piece as being.
Yeah.
And they describe basically what you said, that it is basically just a hoard of treasure that this greatest pirate king has just put in a place and said first man to reach it gets it, basically, and then he got 360 no scoped by the government.
Yeah.
But basically it says that the closest that the Straw Hat Pirates ever came to finding out about the nature of One Piece was during an arc that was called something like Shabaudi Archipelago arc or something.
Yeah.
And when one of the characters tried to ask someone called Silver's Rayleigh about it,
yeah.
But then Luffy stopped him and tried to on the grounds that learning about it from someone else would defeat the purpose of their adventures, and that becoming the Pirate King would have little merit if he already knew anything about One Piece, which in and of itself is an incredibly overplayed cliche to have the main character be like, I don't.
That was quite a long time ago, actually. That was like...
Yeah, exactly. And then I clicked on the arc name, and it said that, it was in episode 400, basically, which means that there has been 500 episodes since with no more progress towards the One Piece, which I just can't accept as good storytelling. I just can't. When the entire premise of your show is ignored for that long.
I feel like
I
feel like the smart thing to do for One Piece, let's say we're going to recraft it, because the general rule is if you have a complaint about a story, then
sure. But I mean, the first order of business is just to cut all the filler, just get rid of all of it. Like make the fights.
I would obviously start from the beginning, and I would just develop the characters.
Yes, obviously.
So we have episode 1. Luffy is on his island. He's talking to his I think episode 1 has the flashback where you first get to meet red-haired Shanks, who's basically Luffy's inspiration for becoming the Pirate King, right?
Yes.
And you have that moment where he's sitting where red-haired Shank is sitting in the bar. You might be able to show off that this is a pirate, or give an example that this is a pirate thing by having a whole kind of action, some kind of thing that indicates that this is a pirate gang sitting here enjoying themselves, drinking beer, right? And then Luffy the kid comes in, who probably knows the bartender quite well, which I think he did in the actual anime. And Red-Hair Shanks obviously
such a voice script.
Yeah, Red-Hair Shanks obviously being a good pirate in a sense, kind of likes the child and lets him stay and takes him into the battle after having presented the devil fruit to one of his shipmates or to someone he knows that lives on the island to show that, hey, we got this great bounty. And then when Luffy comes in, he's really hungry and he finds these fruits sitting on the table and eats it, and that's how he got his power. And then obviously Red-Hair Shanks and most of the other people get quite angry, but they calm themselves down. It's like, well, it's a kid. What are we supposed to do? Beat him to death for eating something that he didn't even know it was? And then later, Luffy's quite good at swimming, and he's used to being able to swim. He never really learns that the devil fruit makes him incapable of swimming. So he tries to swim to sea, which makes him start drowning, and then Red-Hair Shanks saves him, right?
Oh, okay.
And something happens at that moment that makes Red-Hair Shanks decide that this guy can probably be the future Pirate King. So he gives him that straw hat, which has some symbolism in that sense.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, okay. Okay, I get. Yeah, okay, I get what you're sort of getting at here. But like, just in order to pull the conversation back to its original roots of what creates a good story, I'll just say that to summarize my thoughts on this, I think One Piece is a good example of doing story build, like world building correctly, and characters for the most part. Some people that I've talked to that not watch but read the manga for One Piece say that the characters never really have any sort of valuable or strong character development. They stay pretty stagnant the entire time, and they have incredibly interesting and rich backstories, but their characters never really develop. They don't really change much from when you're first introduced to them to when episode to chapter, the latest chapter. They sort of stay stagnant. So I would say that it's a great, yeah.
That's something I said quite early on to a friend of mine, that if the thing that will make or break the series for me is how Luffy changes before he becomes the Pirate King, because he
Yeah.
can't be the Pirate King the way he acts now in my head.
No.
Like,
Wait, but is that still true after watching 900 episodes?
what do you mean that he hasn't changed?
Yeah, like you said that he can't become the Pirate King if he doesn't change. And would you say that he has now, after 900 episodes, changed enough to warrant being a Pirate King?
I think he can warrant being the Pirate King based on the ideology he has, and that has become more clear as time has developed. And that's the fact that being the Pirate King isn't about ruling the world and being the most powerful. It's about being the most free. It's about being able to do what you want when you want. And that's the thing that embodies his character.
But doesn't he already do that, though?
Well, yes, but the question is, he isn't completely capable of doing anything he wants whenever he wants. For example, he wants to get the One Piece, but he's clearly not capable of getting it quite yet. So
no, quite yet. Give it another 20 years, maybe he'll have learned one more clue.
Yes, obviously. So you can clearly see that I agree with his character as it is. I just wish that there was some more development in it. But it's very hard to define. Obviously, changing character development is enormously important for a story.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard and it's important.
Character development is hard and enormously important.
Yeah, and it's definitely important in a series that's that long, and it's definitely even harder in a series that long. Because in a series that long, you need to, if you have consistent character development, then where will the character end up? It will be a completely different character after a while, right? But you also need a consistent character development to keep people interested in the characters, right? So what I would cheat there is by making different characters the focus of each arc, and then only changing one character at a time, or changing two characters at a time. That way you have more characters to change, and that way you can take more time with it. Just as it's kind of off the head illusion, or off the head idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stories.
I understand. Yeah, exactly. No, I just feel like the reason that I just can't become invested in something that big is simply because I believe that a story needs to have an ending, and that it shouldn't, overstay its welcome. And I feel like if you've made something that is as long as that, you have overstayed your welcome by a few years, basically. The story has been there for so long now that you should have ended it so long ago in order for it to retain its value, because the more you have of something, the less value it can accrue, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's why I have such great respect for something like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Harry Potter series, because they knew what they wanted to say, they knew the stories they wanted to tell, and they told their stories, and they did it well, and then they ended. And they gave us that closure, and which is why we can look back on them and say that this is a very good self-contained story that is digestible, fun, interesting, enjoyable. It has all of these qualities at the same time as being not nut-crackingly long, where you have to spend about as much time watching One Piece as you would writing your master's thesis, basically.
Yeah. No, I will slightly disagree with you there. I would compare One Piece a bit to Marvel in that sense, that it's a very long series.
But even Marvel isn't that long. Marvel is like in total what? All 24 or whatever Marvel movies. If each movie is 2.5 hours long, some of them are shorter, some are longer.
That's very true if you count the movies, but if you start counting the canonical universes within comics, you get a very different thing.
Yeah, true. But there are very few people, or at least, not that many people, who read every single comic.
Well, in modern day, yes.
Yeah, in modern day. Maybe back in the day, because we didn't have shit like Netflix and easily digestible shit. Like, we get a new TV show on Netflix every fucking week. Yeah. So, people don't feel the need to consistently engage with something all the time like they did back in the day. Yeah. When a new Marvel comic dropped, you were there because it was the only source of entertainment you were going to get that week.
True.
So
that is very true.
Now you have all these different sources, so you have a lot more to pick between, and thus people are choosing not to, stay with one thing all the time, because they're sort of branching out and And whenever something isn't available of what they're watching, then they'll just watch something else and maybe even forget about the original thing they were seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's yeah, but I don't know. It's just I think that one just stems from my own personal taste in stories and stuff. That
Yeah.
I hate things that overstay their welcome and drag out. So that's pretty much born from my personal opinion. I know that a lot of other people also feel the same way, but I also know that there are people who obviously One Piece is popular for a reason. Marvel comics are still being read for a reason because people are engaging with this still, and there are many people who are still willing to watch the 968th episode of One Piece next week.
Yeah.
So it's people are still willing to do it. It's just not really what I would consider the best way to tell a story, um, which is completely subjective.
Yeah. I agree. I think anyone or a lot of people would agree with your points and also kind of disagree because what you're saying makes a lot of sense. There's also a certain amount of impact that would come with a long running story, obviously, if it's done well.
Yeah.
I feel like making a long running story is a very plausible thing to do. I just think, well, first of all, you need the right audience, which you would do with any story.
Yeah, definitely.
And second of all, you would need to be very talented in keeping that audience engaged.
Yeah.
And I feel like the man who's writing One Piece is just so close to that because he's so good at making sure that you feel like time that's been spent on something hasn't been wasted because it comes back, and he's also so good at making sure that you want to know more and that there's new things you want to learn, and that it's also divided into segments of motivation that you can agree with. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, but he still needs to fix the whole character development thing, and whomever's controlling the anime really needs to just slow down.
I mean, no story is perfect. There isn't a single story that I know of that attains a theoretical perf. There's nothing wrong with it. There is always something wrong with a story because we're human. We're incapable of producing the perfect thing. We can get close to creating something.
I think it's more that we can't define the perfect thing.
That too.
Because we all have completely different ways of defining things. So
and different opinions about what we find enjoyable. So it's
Well, then that's also the thing about what makes a good story. Where like the most important part of the conversation is the fact that there's not just one type of story that's enjoyed by one type of people. Or story isn't universally enjoyed in the same way. I could say easily that I'm not a fan of the typical archetypal story where it's about morals being challenged against the wrong morals, and then you simply have a fight and the winner wins.
Exactly.
I'm much more in trying to produce a nuanced story that teaches a bit of philosophy or teaches a bit of more complicated subjects through the story. But those are much harder to write too, and they're much harder to get the general audience to like. It's like a story I came up with a while back is basically about where the enemy is basically omnipotent in a sense, like indirectly omnipotent.
Yes.
He has access to omnipotent information, and that omnipotent information can choose what information to give it, right? Or to give him, right? And the main character tries to fight an omnipotent thing, and I obviously make them lose because he's omnipotent. He can't lose. He knows what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So and that story is just a long, big lesson that don't fight fights you can't win when you know you can't win them, and don't expect something impossible to be possible because it isn't.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's the number one problem I have with a lot of like shows and books and TV series and whatever is like, they always come down to this conclusion that with the power of friendship, anything is possible, but it really isn't. Like, friendships can break.
Yeah.
And,
I think
life.
I think the thing there is that that's an archetypal story that doesn't relate to your view of the universe. It disconnects with you, and that's where the problem comes in. Because that's why archetypal stories are good, because they connect with how you believe the universe works. Because the right morality wins. When you watch a story and the wrong morality wins from your experience, then suddenly it's not correct.
And I feel like a lot of people would get mad at that too. If the bad morality wins in a story, they get mad because that's it hits a little too close to home. It
Yeah.
kind of reminds them that sometimes, the bad stuff in life, wins. You can't avoid it. Like, you're not going to live a perfect life.
Yeah.
You're not going to solve all of your problems. Some problems are always going to be there. Or even if they disappear, new problems are going to take their place. And I feel like, if you write a story where it isn't made abundantly clear that, this isn't a traditional archetypal story, then, people will get mad because they're like, oh shit, I didn't come here to be bummed out, basically,
Yeah.
to be reminded
Like,
of how painful existence is.
I'm gonna do myself a favor and Google archetype, just like the definition, just to make sure we're doing this right.
I mean, it is called Unprofessional Conversation, so we really don't really. This is just like, spitballing, basically. We're not really.
Well,
we're not sharing factual information here.
Well, yeah, but the idea of the stream is that we're trying to talk professionally without being expected to talk professionally, right? We're not saying that we're professionals. Yes. We're just trying to think professionally without having the burden of being professionals.
Exactly.
Archetype, a very typical example of a certain person or thing. Yeah. So it kind of exemplifies the morals in a sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's the best way I feel like to defend it. But basically, where was I? Where was we? As
yeah, no. We can sort of just drag it back in because we were just discussing, how unconventional stories may be disliked because they don't, have a positive ending or whatever.
That's very nice, and I feel like that's very experience based. And since it's very experience based, you can quickly realize that that stories depend on the experience of the person, and so the most liked story will always be the story that relates to the majority. Because
and I mean, if you
like,
okay, I just don't. While we're on the topic of this whole bad ending thing, let me use Harry Potter as an example because Harry Potter very much falls into this fucking trap essentially, where the ultimate power that Harry in Harry Potter has is that he has love and Voldemort does not. And if you just think about that in a vacuum, it is insanely cliche. Like it's honestly it's honestly just stupid if you think about it. But that was the point that the author wanted to get across. J.K. Rowling, she wanted to tell people that if you have love, you can overcome a lot of difficulties in your life. If you have people that you love and that love you and that you can trust and rely on, then you can get through very tough challenges that you wouldn't otherwise be able to beat alone. And sure, it might be a cliche, but it is a good message. And even if it isn't always true,
I would change it a bit then, because what J.K. Rowling says is that love is if we're going to go slightly philosophical terms, it's its own metaphysical thing, right? It is a separate thing from what it's not a consequence of the existing world. It's a fundamental part of it, right? And it's a subjective and kind of metaphysical thing. So if love isn't something that's kind of something that people feel for you, it's a thing beyond that kind of is in your soul or whatever. Or in
basically.
Space. What I feel
it's a deeper power than anything else.
Yeah. What I think is a better message to send is that Harry Potter isn't as strong as Voldemort, fundamentally.
No, exactly.
But Harry Potter has a lot to lose he loves to lose because of Voldemort, and has lost a lot he loves to lose to Voldemort. And that is powerful motivation. And so I feel like the story...
And I mean, and I'm not saying that, the ending of Harry Potter is bad, because it obviously isn't. I mean, if I watched 7 Harry Potter movies, and in the last one, he gets fucking no-scoped by Voldemort and just dies, and that's the end of the series, which, you could argue would be realistic, I would be super disappointed. I would be like, the fuck, that wasn't entertaining.
That's why we want to change it, to make it so it isn't this metaphysical love that powers Harry. It's the fact that he has things he loves that motivates him to gain power. And then he can use that power to defeat Voldemort, right? And then you show that love is a good motivator. And it isn't enough to do the thing, but it is enough to get you to the point where you can do the thing.
Yeah, that, you could definitely change it to that, and that would be at least a more realistic approach to it. That isn't the one J.K. Rowling chose to take, but it's her story. Harry Potter is a international phenomenon. I'm not going to question it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to criticize it. I mean, I love the damn thing. I
Yeah, no,
wouldn't be writing fan
I
fictions
am
about it.
quite critical of Harry Potter in modern age, and it's
Yeah.
mostly because of the fact that, well, I can say this, and my point of view is kind of discriminated by the fact that I'm not an enormously popular writer, so I'm probably in a perspective of which we're taking down or having mean arguments on the position of a very popular creative writer is good
Yes.
for me. So, but what I would say is that it's a lot about the circumstances that those books came out in.
Well, yeah, that too, and because
Yeah.
it's built on an incredibly good idea.
Yeah,
Like the idea behind Harry Potter is enticing to everyone.
yeah,
Literally, almost everyone can like the idea of going to a boarding school where you learn magic.
yeah.
Like that idea is phenomenal. So
No, I very much.
even
It's not even phenomenal, but it's enormously relatable because it integrates the metaphysical part of it into the average day life of it, and you understand that you get an understanding of the fact that magic isn't only this magical or this super thing that fixes all your problem. You get to understand that this is a subject, something you have to learn, something
you can learn about, you can study it,
Yeah, and you feel
and that's
you also feel a realism to it because of the fact that there's different amounts of talent in it. Like Hermione is a great character because he contrasts Harry and Ronnie so much in talent that you understand that this is.
She should have ended up with Harry, though. To be honest, I'm gonna die on this hill where I feel like Hermione should have ended up with Harry because she just doesn't work with Ron.
Yeah.
Like the two of them don't have that good of a chemistry in neither the movies nor the books.
Yeah.
In the books, it's more acceptable, but in the movies, it kind of just comes out of nowhere. Like suddenly in the fourth movie, Hermione has feelings for Ron. It's like, what? Where did those come from? If you haven't read the books, you wouldn't have seen it coming.
That's very true. I would say that it's as a book of role models, I think it's kind of nice that Harry and Hermione can have this amazingly good dynamic.
Oh
Be very, very good friends.
Amazingly good friendship without the pretense of being interested in boinking one another, basically.
Yes, and I think that's a very, very good thing to teach in some.
It's a good precedent that you can have friendships with girls without wanting to put your dick in them, basically.
Yeah. So
I've
never experienced it myself, but
Yeah, I mean, bro. No, I mean, realistically speaking, most of your female friends you could realistically envision yourself banging. Like it's just a phenomenon. Like guys, we have a much lower barrier for sex than girls.
Yeah.
We're willing to sleep with something that we wouldn't necessarily date, whereas a woman is more on the emotional side of it. At least usually, this isn't set in stone, but usually females are a little bit more connected to the emotional side of it, and they want to be special.
In psychological terms, they're high on the spectrum of neuroticism, which is basically emotional stuff.
Exactly.
Also,
whereas we can sort of fuck shit without.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we get emotionally invested too, of course, but we can still, we could imagine ourselves just banging our best friend, probably.
Yeah.
So, or at least our best female friend or whatever. It's just how it is. But I think you're right in that it sets a very good precedent and tells people that you can actually have female friends without ending up romanticizing them or getting rejected. Yeah, you can actually have female friends, and I have female friends.
So
I have quite a few actually.
Yeah, that's why I would change the argument to I feel Hermione should end up with Harry to say
yes.
I don't feel Hermione should have ended up with Ronnie. I just feel like she should have just been Hermione. Or just ended up with some character that actually had a developed relationship, or just have a developed relationship with Ron.
Yeah.
Instead of an insistent one. Then again, I don't.
Yes.
I don't know how you classify how that situation came to be. If it's because J.K. felt pressure on something, or if it's because
J.K. has said herself that she actually intended for Harry and Hermione to be together.
Well, she has said a lot of stuff that she
true. J.K. Rowling is infamous for going back and retconning her own books with bullshit facts and bullshit shit that she definitely didn't think of 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But, at least that was some of the earliest, among, Dumbledore being gay, it was also Hermione should have actually originally ended up with Harry, but she was unsure about who to put Ron with, and so she had to sort of shuffle it around. And Harry ended up dating Ginny, even though she hadn't originally planned on making Ginny a massive character, like a big character at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, which is why it is kind of ironic in the books as well. Now, in the movies specifically, he really
That's
doesn't have that much screen time in the entire series. But for
yeah.
some reason, after Cho Chang, Harry becomes very infatuated with Ginny for seemingly no reason, and
Uh,
it's very like it creates like an emotional disconnect, or like a sense of
it
confusion for the viewer, because they're like, what, how did this happen? How did we get here?
it kind of ruins the suspension of disbelief when
Yeah,
your
exactly.
interpretation of how emotions outplay is a bit broken.
Exactly.
So
Usually relationships stem from friendships. That's usually how it starts for everyone. You don't immediately walk into a room and become infatuated with someone just based on how they look. You usually get to know them, you develop a friendship, and then feelings, romantic feelings, sort of develop from there.
yeah, no, I think
So,
what we've gotten to here is that I don't like using this word, but I feel like we've kind of defined that one of the biggest qualities in a good story is relatable in quotation mark, like relatable in the
oh
sense
yeah,
that
no, but I understand what you mean. It has to be emotionally resonant
yeah, and I think
with the
all the
reader.
qualities you have is basically how well that relatability is distributed. Like the characters needs to
Exactly.
be understandable but different from you, um, and the events that happen need to be so relatable to your life that it's not suspension that it can be suspension of disbelief. The moral of the story needs to
Yes.
be so relatable that it keeps suspension of disbelief and is also something you consider a good ending and story.
I mean, it doesn't.
You know,
I mean, true, but it doesn't need to be relatable to this to your life in the direct way of like this I could see happening to me.
yeah, obviously,
Because
it just has to
obviously,
be something you
you're
consider.
not gonna be an Avenger. Like that's not gonna fucking happen.
Yeah, it has
So
to be an
but the story,
it
yeah,
has to be a very genderized relation, right? The way you
yeah,
use archetypal, like
exactly.
you
Yeah,
could say
and you have
that.
to sort of you have to be it has to resonate with you emotionally as well, and
Yeah,
like emotionally, it doesn't just need to evoke good. You don't need to, a story doesn't need to make you feel good in order to be good. If a
yeah,
story makes you feel fear, or if it makes you feel unease, or if it makes you feel dread, then arguably it could still be a good story because it evoked strong emotions in you. Stephen King isn't always out to make you feel like you're walking on sunshine basically.
yeah.
The guy
Obviously,
writes some pretty horrible shit, but it's still good because it invokes emotions in you,
yeah.
and it makes you invested in the story. And that's what I think is very important. You need to sort of create something that people can be like invested in, and
Yes,
feel like they're not wasting their time reading or engaging with.
yeah.
So
Obviously,
and
and they
it all
also
sort of just comes back to
a way
it
to
all
I
just sort
think
of comes back to yeah.
yeah, like an hour going forward, maybe, yeah. But basically, I feel like the a way to define this to define finding value in a story is that it articulates a characteristic that you feel is relevant to reality, in a very complicated manner. Like you could say, well, I feel the characteristic of love being relevant to solving problems in the sense that having love is far better than not having it. You could say, well, that's relevant to reality. That's an articulated wisdom that I consider true. So I kind of
Yes.
it taught me this better or learned me this better. Yes.
I mean, yeah, but you're not always gonna learn something. Silence of the Lambs. What
Uh-huh.
is that? What is that gonna teach you? Oh, I've learned to not skin humans, uh,
Well,
from watching or reading this book.
well then it's not. I don't really know a lot about Silence of the Lambs, but I'm thinking you're just describing horror movies in general. It's like,
Yeah,
where do
well,
you?
horror movies. It's not necessarily horror, but like crime, shit like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, well the question is like, it's not really learning in a sense. It's just more about articulating something you know is true, from just
Or
like
yes,
a biological perspective or a sociological perspective, right? So
yeah,
you could say that
yeah,
scary movies does that. It teaches you the truth that being in that situation is horrifying and it's difficult
yes,
and you can't do things about it. and you don't want to be there. So, but there's also adrenaline and there's also joy in it, and you understand that as you're there. And there's also interest in the whole subject, and that's why some people in horror movies, I think some people are very much more on one side where they're interested and they feel like there's a mystery and there's adrenaline, while other people are like, no, this is scary, let me get out of this situation. So I feel that might be like a trait where it's like some people are built to go into the dark and figure out what's there so they can kill it, and some people are built to run away from the dark so they don't get killed by the thing there.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a very confrontational person. Like, I've never really been in a fight that wasn't, strictly verbal or, anything like that. I'm not like I hate confronting people about shit. I tend to just, stick to myself when it comes to like, negative stuff. I avoid fights like the plague, shit like that. But I love action movies and I love horror movies. Yeah. So it's like, I think it's just, the fact that you can sort of relate to a story, it evokes emotions in you, it makes you feel things, and it makes you want to invest time into it. Then you have a winner. Even if the story you're writing doesn't necessarily have the best objective value, take something like, for instance, Sword Art Online. Story is dog shit, character development is dog shit, but a lot of people still love it because it makes them feel, childlike on the inside and giddy because of this idea of being stuck in an MMO is really exciting to them.
Yeah, it's definitely nothing to do with the plot.
Exactly.
So
exactly, like Kirito as a character is basically a blank piece of paper that has been given a name.
Yeah.
They've taken a blank piece of paper and they've called it Kirito. That's basically what Kirito is.
Yeah, he's the whole archetype of what people think they are, but what they really are.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a typical self-insert character where you can sort of put yourself in Kirito's place. Imagine yourself as Kirito.
Yeah.
A little harder to do if you're a female, of course, but
Yeah.
Still also, applies. He's a self-insert.
Females are lower on what's it called? I forget. There's no name for that actually. Females are higher on neuroticism, so they're not as arrogant as to be able to think of themselves as an OP super being, while men are more tendency to have that confidence. I think I would assume that's because men need that confidence to confront things. Like you can't hunt something unless you have the confidence to attack it.
Yeah, have the confidence to face it and think you're above it, basically.
Yeah. So.
And I mean, there are still females, like for instance with the Hunger Games. I'm sure there are tons of girls out there who self-inserted themselves into Katniss, the main character, and sort of envisioned themselves to be her. Like it's still possible. It's just that men have more of a penchant for it.
Yeah, no, because because the neuroticism and stuff I've been talking about are 5 spectrums of personality that are common. Yeah. They're kind of commonly said. There's still debates about the whole personality metric stuff, but it's basically neuroticism, which just describes how emotional you are, and the higher your neuroticism, the more unstable your emotions are in negative ways, and also positive ways in a sense. And then you have openness, which is how open you are to subject, and is usually relating to how good you are talking about philosophy, science, just being interested in ideas in general, and topics like that. And then you have what's the word? Not introvert, but extroversion, right? Which is just how social you are and how socially confident you are and how social you work. And also it goes a bit onto your ability to articulate stuff. I would suspect that's because articulation isn't a biological tool to describe things, but it's a biological tool to communicate socially, right?
Yeah, and it's also something that you can train. You can get better at public speaking and articulating yourself if you actively engage with it. Yeah. But if you, for instance, if you spend some time in social situations and you realize that I'm feeling uncomfortable, then I feel like, what a lot of introverts do is that they'll be sort of more like, this makes me feel uncomfortable, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Whereas extroverts will, think more like, this might make me uncomfortable, but I'm going to push through so that I can sort of, because it makes me feel good to sort of conquer this. Whereas introverts will be like, I'm perfectly okay with this being uncomfortable, so I'm just going to stop doing it. I don't feel the
Yes.
need to, become super outgoing and, conquer my social anxiety. Basically, I'll just, I'll live with it. It's fine.
Yeah. No, often the kind of the most common trait in people who are on the extreme sides is that as an antisocial person, or what's it called, an introvert, tends to
Yeah.
become tired from social interactions with large masses and also sometimes singular people.
Yes.
And extroverts tend to become tired when they're alone too long. So often it's more about the fact that they just don't have the energy to do the conversation, and so they don't have the ability to spend efforts getting better at the conversation. Um,
Yeah.
well, the second last trait is agreeableness, which is basically just how how empathetic you are, how capable you are of relating to emotions, and also
Yeah.
just in general how willing you are to accept someone else's opinion. If you're low in agreeableness, you'll often challenge people on their opinions, and you often say, "No, that's wrong and stupid." And I feel
Yeah.
it's a good indicator of critical thought in the sense. It doesn't mean you have to be good at critical thought. It just means you attempt it a lot, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then we have
I feel like
conscientiousness. Hmm? You
Yeah,
can
I
continue.
feel like if you're the type of person who's like very vocal about your opinions and are very you're kind of confrontational about others' opinions and stuff. I have a feeling that you're gonna have a hard time being like, you know, well liked or popular.
Yeah,
Because sure, you're gonna meet people who are also going to be like you, who are going to accept the fact that you have strong opinions.
yeah,
But there are also going to be a lot of people who are going to dislike the fact that you're calling them out, basically.
yeah,
Even if their opinion are stupid and deserves to be called out, they're still going to dislike the fact that you're doing it. So
yeah.
they're going to, sort of try to spread rumors about you or make you sort of appear as if you're, not worth hanging out with and that you're basically
Being
just a waste of space.
being low in agreeableness often is a good predictor of being disliked by people a lot.
Yeah, the
And it is also a
majority.
very good predictor of getting higher payments and
I
being
mean, yeah,
high in the
obviously. I
yeah.
feel like if you're gonna be like a CEO or something, you kind of have to be a sociopath a little bit
No,
because
well,
if you
like
kind of have to be a little bit fucking crazy. Uh,
the best predictors of being a CEO is being slightly low in agreeableness enough that you can actually have like people can respect you a bit. And
yeah,
also the last category, which is conscientiousness, which is basically your ability to insert routines and
yeah,
being reliable. And yeah, if you can insert routines well and you can continue to do them, then you're very, very, very good to get into the position of a CEO, because then you can actually do the job efficiently. If you're like me and they're super low on conscientiousness and can't make a routine for the shit of you, you're stuck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're fucked.
So, because I'm just enormously high on openness, I think, I would assume, I haven't really tested, and enormously low on conscientiousness, which makes it me. I love talking about stuff, but I hate sitting down and researching it, which is why it's called unprofessional
Yeah, exactly,
conversation. um,
exactly. But oh
so,
yeah, no, no, I get what you mean. Yeah, we kind of derailed there for a little bit, but
yeah, that's fine. Well, I think
um,
it's an important thing to go over because when you know
yeah,
the personality traits, you can usually. You have a better ability to
yeah,
understand what humans
to
would like,
make
what
your
series.
characters humans. Yeah,
Yeah, not only that, but also define what people would like, what story, right? If you're
yeah. What group do you want to target with your story?
yeah, if you're low in agreeableness, then you're gonna want stories that are very critical, thought through, and that shows very accurate depictions of the world and not very metaphysical depictions of the world or subjective depictions of the world. And if you're very agreeable, you probably want emotional things, things that
Yeah,
support people
exactly.
and relates to people and says good and kind things, right? And you're also gonna get much more emotional impact out of the agreeable people because they have much more emotional ability, while the not agreeable
Yeah,
people or the people low in agreeability wants logical puzzles. They want clever writing instead of emotional writing.
yeah, exactly.
So, and there's also four
That's probably
common.
why I'm such shonen trash.
Yeah,
It's why I can watch, shitty ass animes, but if they have badass moments in them, I'll still love it because it just makes me feel so hype.
yeah,
Like it resonates with me so like emotionally that, I'll just think this is fucking awesome, even though, the objective quality of it is kind of dog shit. It isn't really a good show or a good book or a good movie, but I still like it because I just, it makes me feel incredibly hyped.
Yes, I can understand the feeling.
Sort
Yes.
of the Transformers movies, for instance, right? Like
Yes.
the objective storytelling quality of a Transformers movie is dog shit. Yet I still enjoy it because it's giant fucking robots beating the ever loving shit out of each other, and that is
Yes.
badass.
Definitely,
So it's
definitely. It's also
yeah,
much
exactly.
like the Christopher Nolan movies are kind of known for being very cleverly written, but also being very action filled. So
Yeah,
he
exactly.
has a
I just saw
mastery.
his latest movie. Like I just literally saw his latest movie
I
two
have
days ago.
not
It
seen
was
it,
amazing.
sadly enough.
It was amazing. I loved it.
But that's understandable. I have heard positive things about it. It's a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yes, I
What
loved it.
what did
It
you
was great.
expect? No,
It's a Christopher Nolan movie. You
yeah.
already know what to
I
expect.
think
But
I
this one
think
is
I'm
even more wacky than normal.
yeah. I've heard about that. It's got time travel in it, so it's definitely wacky.
Mad time travel.
Oof. No, so I think he manages that a lot. He's capable of making logically interesting movies without taking away the
Yeah.
emotionability. I think he's very, very good at sitting down and taking these traits that we have and actually kind of getting both
Yeah.
the spectrums on them in a balanced manner. And that's probably why the population likes his movies, because it talks to all the spectrums. It's not extreme on the spectrum, so it's not something you go, well, this is the best and most wonderful and most artistic thing ever made. You kind of go, that was
Yeah.
awesome instead.
Yeah, exactly. The
Because it,
people who like to see the clever writing and the deconstruction of the typical tropes, they'll like it because it is cleverly written and it has a lot of really, a lot to unpack. Whereas those of you who just, want to see some badass action scenes are going to see some mind-bogglingly badass action scenes.
yes. So,
It sort of it has a wide appeal,
yeah,
which, is important if you're going to create something that is monetarily successful.
yeah, definitely.
In a way, if you want the huge numbers basically, then
Well,
that is what you want to be looking
one
at.
of the
You want to be
most
looking at wide appeal.
I think one of the most important things when it comes to getting wide appeal isn't first and foremost quality. It's first and foremost reputation.
Yeah,
Um,
reputation, jumping on trends,
yeah,
recognizing what people look for in like a movie,
yeah,
or a TV show or a book or something, and then sort of writing to their tastes. The
yeah,
difficult thing about that is that it can be difficult to write something that you're satisfied with when you're just writing in order to appease someone.
yeah,
Most of the best story, what I would call some of the best stories out there, were written because the author himself or herself had a great idea, they really liked it, and they developed it out of their own, on their own free time and their own hobby, and they
yeah.
just wanted to see it come to fruition, and then people happened to love it. So
And
I
that
feel like if you're writing something solely for monetary gain, your chances of success are going to be, ironically enough, almost slimmer than
yeah.
those who write out of passion, because you're just gonna get tired of it before you manage to
Well,
finish it or write something good.
I wouldn't say so exact. Like, there's a lot of more elements into it. Because someone who writes for the sake of monetary gain gets a much, or has the willingness to get a much more refined knowledge of writing, while those who write out of passion, like, you could say, well, the ones who succeed from writing out of passion succeed really well, but there's an enormous amount of number who write out of passion that doesn't succeed in comparison.
I
While
mean,
the
yeah,
one,
obviously,
yeah, while
because
the
some
ones who,
some if you write out of passion, then it's more likely that you're writing according to your taste,
yeah,
which may not resonate with many people, if any at all.
yeah,
So if you're writing something solely for yourself, unless your tastes happen to be very like sort of mainstream, then your passion project probably isn't going to garner that much attention, because people are just going to be like, well, that's a weird ass fucking concept, and then kind of ignore it.
yeah. I
Um,
think a
whereas
psychologist called Jordan Peterson describes it very well when it comes to that. Being creative in modern society is the high risk, high reward game. The chances
Yeah,
of you getting
exactly.
a good book is zero. It just mathematically, like, not perfect, not literally, but just like, it's so close to zero that there's really no point. You could say, obviously
Yeah,
there is a point, because if you're creative,
but you could also,
hmm?
yeah, you could also argue so that something like, for instance, fucking, Hunger Games isn't a very good story, but it still has, wide, widespread appeal to a lot of
Yeah.
people.
obviously.
I'm not saying that Hunger Games isn't good, but it's like some
Whatever.
people would definitely say that Hunger Games isn't anything special. It's just another dystopian sci-fi story made for young adults, like Divergent,
Yeah,
like all of these other
and
shows out there, basically.
I feel that's why we have the artistic spectrum, which is this
Yeah.
not spectrum, but we have the thing where it's like some people, like the majority of population, the people you will have to get to if you want to be a millionaire, will
Yeah.
they like specific things, and the people who want and if you go to the stuff where I want to make something really great and really well made, and kind of quote unquote perfect, you will have to go to the artistic side of it, where there's much less people and much less chance to get in, and there's much higher skill in the competition. But it's a completely different field where you have much more creative freedom, much more emotional freedom. I would
Precisely.
say. Whilst in
I mean, if you wanted to make an anime in 2020 that made a lot of money, chances are you should make an isekai anime.
yeah,
But if you wanted to make like a really interesting, well, kind of out of the ordinary type anime, then maybe you should look at a different genre. Maybe you should try to make a crime show or something.
I would be careful
some
with picking genres when you're trying to write a story like that.
what?
I would be careful with picking genres when you're trying to make a story like that. Like you would.
I mean, yeah, but every story has a genre to sort of fits within a genre.
You make the story before you put the genre on it, as they say.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah. And then you use the tips and tricks within that genre to perfect the story in the aftermath. So.
Yes, I mean, kind of, but yes, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So dividing conquer. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I think we'll have to also split this entire thing up into multiple parts because we've already been at it for 2 hours and my phone is almost out of battery. So.
Well, we've been at it for 1 hour and 16 minutes, just recording wise.
16?
Yeah.
No, but didn't we just stop the recording halfway through?
What? Well, yeah, we started a recording. Like the stream has been going on for 1 hour and 30 minutes. The recording has been going on for 1 hour and 16 minutes. So.
Okay, but I called you at 7, so we spent a lot of time just fucking around with the.
Yeah, obviously. If you want to take a break, we can take a break.
Yeah, it's just that I have other people that kind of expected me to be back by now because they were like, yeah, it's not going to take more than 2 hours max.
Yeah, okay, well that's understandable. Well, we can end it here if you want, and then make it a different part later. That sounds good.
Yeah, I'd love to make different parts because there's just so much to tackle there. Making a good story is such a vague subject, so there's so much to talk about, much to tackle.
I think what might be smart is maybe writing a document where we can separate it into parts, so we can tackle the parts in a more structured sequence.
Yeah.
Because right now we're just jumping around a lot, and
we're jumping around a lot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it might be interesting as a conversation, but it's a very structural way to actually answer the question. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll test that next time, and if we feel that's more comfortable, we can continue with it. If this is more comfortable, we'll do that. So, but
sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I say this is it for now. So.
Yep.
That was Unprofessional Conversation. It wasn't very professional, but hopefully it was interesting. So we'll see you later.